Okay. Last time we were talking about stuff, we were talking about a bay and how a bay is this area right here. And the reason why I put your boats back there is because the waves will hit onto the land here. And that makes this nice and calm for boats to be parked at. All right, next bullets. Golf. So make a bullet and write down golf. And then make a 1. A large bay where the sea extends deep inland. So a large bay where sea extends deep inland. So a gulf is just a large bay where the sea extends deep inland. And again, it's covered on 3 sides by land, just like a bay is, except it's just bigger. So the difference really between a bay and a gulf is a bay is small and a gulf is big. And for gulfs that you guys kind of are familiar with would be Gulf of Mexico. That'd be the one you guys are most familiar with. There's also the Persian Gulf as well. That's another major gulf that's over in the Middle East. And let me show you a picture of a gulf. So this is the Gulf of Mexico right here. You can see how it's covered on land on 3 sides. So you have Mexico here and Yucatan Peninsula. There's Texas there. You got Louisiana, Alabama. Then you get into Florida. And those are 3 sides that cover the Gulf of Mexico, which is this area right there. All right, so that's the Gulf of Mexico. Next one, new bullet, desert. So bullet, desert. And then 1, area with little or no precipitation. And precipitation just means rain. So precipitation just means rain. So for a desert, since it's a place with little or no rain, in the United States, for our deserts, by the Las Vegas area, you have the Mojave Desert. And then in south of that, there's another desert called the Sonora. So you have kind of 2 deserts in the United States, the Mojave and Sonora. But the most common desert that you guys are probably most familiar with, because when you think of the United States, you don't really think of, desert. The desert you guys are more familiar with are kind of hot deserts that are just all sand, like this. So this would be like the Sahara Desert, right? So the Sahara Desert is pretty much all sand and such. Now there is barren rocks as well. The reason why you don't really see a lot of barren rocks in the Sahara though is because it gets very hot in the Sahara Desert and then it gets very cold. And that constant expansion and contraction of the rocks, because the rock gets warm, expands. As it gets cold, it contracts. Because it expands and contracts all the time, rocks do, that causes them to break down and become sand. All right, so that's why you don't really see a lot of rocks here. But there are deserts that are very hot, like the Sahara. But there are deserts that are also very cold. Antarctica is a cold desert because it doesn't rain there. It hasn't rained there in like 1,000 years or something. While the Sahara Desert here is a hot desert. Next bullet, canyon. Next bullet, canyon. And then a 1, a ravine or a deep valley with cliffs on either side. So bullet canyon, 1, a ravine or a deep valley with cliffs on either side. And for the canyon there, since it's a deep valley with cliffs on either side, you mainly can find, of course, canyons out in the west, out in Arizona, like the Grand Canyon. So your Grand Canyon would be a canyon. So it's just straight down to the bottom of the canyon. And then at the bottom of the canyon, you have a river. That's the Colorado River. Is at the very bottom of a canyon. Let me show you the Grand Canyon here. So that's my picture. So you can see right there, that's the canyon going right down there. So that canyon, that kind of slit right there, that's the Grand Canyon. And that river at the bottom of it is the Colorado. And so that's the Grand Canyon right there, which you can go visit the Grand Canyon and such. So it's kind of just a straight down and such, just from there. So from there, down the very bottom, straight down. Next bullet, glacier. Next bullet, glacier. And then 1, mass of ice that forms in the mountains and moves downward. So 1, mass of ice that forms in the mountains and moves downward. So a glacier is this massive chunk of ice that kind of generally forms in very cold areas, but it can also form. It can form in mountains, but it can also form in very cold areas like Antarctica or the North Pole. And then it can kind of break from wherever it's at and then start to kind of move on its own. And glaciers can go pretty far sometimes. Sometimes they cover a lot of world. So, for example, all the lakes in Michigan, those have been carved up by glaciers. So glaciers kind of came in and just kind of dug into the earth and so forth. And that's why Michigan has a lot of lakes. But in Indiana, we don't really have that many lakes because, well, the glaciers never really got down to us. All right, so that was during the Ice Age and so forth. But let me show you a picture of a glacier. Now, normally we think of a glacier, you think of this thing right here. That's not a glacier, that's an iceberg. Glacier is this giant sheet of ice behind it, okay? That's a glacier. Now, what you see is only part of the glacier. Most of the glacier, I believe 80% of the glacier, is actually under the water. So most of this is actually under the water right now, and only a bit is up top. So only about like 20% up top, and the rest is kind of underneath the water, the other 80%. And I probably should check on that. So let's see here. Glacier below water. Let's see if that kind of pops up or not. If we can quickly find what we're looking for. 90%. Okay, I was almost right. So 90% of an iceberg, or in this case, the glacier that we're looking at here in the background, is below water. There are 10% above. So 90 below, 10 above. So this right here, that's only 10% of this iceberg. The rest of it's all below water. Okay, so once I want to kind of go back to it, just in case you didn't quite finish it. All right, next one. Bullet Mountain. Bullet Mountain. And then one, large high hills. So Bullet Mountain, and then their large high hill. So large high hill. Mountain, large high hill. So a mountain is just a large high hill. How high? To be a mountain, you need to be at least 1,000 feet. So a mountain has to be 1,000 feet or more. All right, so that's a mountain. If it's below 1,000 feet, no mountain, just a big hill. So you can be 999 feet and you're just a super tall hill. That's just kind of how it works. Indiana doesn't have any mountains in it. We got hills, no mountains though. Same thing with a lot of our neighbors. Michigan doesn't have any mountains. Ohio doesn't have any mountains, so forth and so on. So a lot of our neighbors do. Only high hills, no real mountains. What does the mountain look like? Well, this is the mountain right there. So you can see mountain here. So those are mountains. All right, next one, fjord. And then after a fjord, one, a long, saltwater, narrow, steep-sided inlet. So we got Bullet Fjord, and then one long, saltwater, narrow, steep-sided inlet. All right, fjords. It's not an English word. This word is from the Scandinavian nations. Scandinavian nations being like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, those being the Scandinavian nations. So this word's from their area because fjords are something that you really only find in the northernmost areas of the world and the southernmost areas of the world. So I can find a fjord, for example, in Alaska, or I can find a fjord in Norway, but I'm not going to find a fjord in Florida. All right. So what does a fjord look like? Well, let me show you a picture of a fjord. This is a fjord here. So this fjord, you can see how it looks like a river. It's not actually a river. It's just the water from the ocean has come into this area. So this is actually all ocean water. So it's just ocean water. That's what this is. So it's not a river. It's actually ocean water. That's all this is. So it's all ocean water. That's just kind of extending deep inland. So not fresh water, all salt. But you can see how the ocean water, how it's come in, and you can see how it's pretty high. So it's kind of this, it's up high, and it's very steep. So that is a fjord. And as that, you can find fjords in very northern climates, like Alaska, or in Norway, or in very southern climates. All right, well, that's it for today's notes. We'll do our test on Monday.